Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership at TEPSA. And each episode, I look to bring you a different guest who has encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another, and bring them on to share some of their story in hopes that it inspires you to share some of yours. Guys, I could not be more excited about today's guest. I have been obsessed, and my wife as well, with the show that he has been a part of. I love his work. I've on a whim reached out thinking this is one of those big dreams that is never going to happen. And he said yes. So please welcome my guest today, Matt Paxton.
What's up,
Matt,
man?
introduce yourself and kind of tell everybody who you are if they don't know.
So I'm the guy from that TV show Hoarders. I clean up all the really, really messy houses. I have a new show on PBS. It's called Legacy List, and I help find history in people's attics and basically going through our grandparents' houses, finding history in their houses. But I've made a 20-year career of helping people go through all their stuff.
I love it. Well, Matt, I am so excited about today's conversation. So I'm going to jump right in. So, when I start with my guests, I always love to see, as kids, we grow up thinking we're going to be something. We have an idea and a dream, and usually that isn't what it becomes. What did you want to be when you were a kid? Was it helping people clean up their stuff?
Man, I wanted to be a weatherman really bad. I really wanted to be a weatherman. And when I went to college, my professor, the first week I was just struggling academically with the basic concepts of weather. Mm-hmm. And my meteorology professor, he just said, dude, this isn't going to work, man. And he took me down to the business department I'll never forget, he walked me down the hallway and he introduced me to Dr. Evans, who ran the business department. And I've been an entrepreneur ever since. The teacher was dead on right. He knew I couldn't do it, and he put me in the right way. It was a good call. But yeah, I really wanted to be a weatherman.
Well, before we even jump into Hoarders, one of the things that's talked about quite often on that show and through the stuff that you've done is, just the idea of organization. Are you an organized person?
I am. I'm very organized, and I didn't know it until I had kids.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got 3 young kids now, 6, 8, and 10 years old. And I'm super organized. It works for me. I believe organization is a choice. You have to be dedicated to it. It's just like weight loss. It's just like fitness. For me, it really matters. I'm also single. I'm dating, and it turns out it doesn't always matter to other people. So I've had to come to terms with that too, right? It's a part of my life. I enjoy it. It makes me happy. It gives me focus, and it kind of centers me. But it's not for everybody. Some people are just messy, and that's okay. It doesn't bother them. It might bother you, but it doesn't bother them, and that's fine.
And it's so funny, especially when you get into a relationship with someone, you don't always know right away if they're going to be the organized person or anything like that. And so I remember when my wife and I got together, and when we got married and moved in, it was like, oh my goodness, now I get to learn, is this person a clean freak, or like what rules are they going to have? And when the person is not exactly the same as you, that can be a little like stressful at times.
Oh, it sucks when I get invited to like a dinner party or something, and people know the guy from Hoarders is coming into their house, and I'll walk in and I'll be like, this is the cleanest your house has ever been, isn't it? And they're like, yes, we hired 2 maids to come in, People get really nervous.
Yeah. When you invite friends over, period, it's like you want to clean up a little bit. But yeah, I can imagine when you invite somebody who is on a cleaning and organizing show, it's I got to get this together. Like
I hardcore. See it. I can see they're exhausted because they've been up all night cleaning before we got there. It's funny. I just make a joke of it now, but man, I do know people like really stressed out about it.
Oh, I believe it. I would be one of those people, and my wife would probably be like, he can't come over. Like, there's no way I can get it that organized where he doesn't judge us, even though it's not like you would to begin with.
It's fun. The people it is a thing, right? People get nervous. And also everyone thinks that their house is the worst. And this is beyond just people I know. I've learned this in hoarding. People think that their hardship or their weakness is the worst. Yeah. And then when you go, oh, so that's not that bad, you have to tell them like 4 or 5 stories. And it takes them a while to relax and be like, okay, I'm not so bad. Like one of my communication techniques is the worst I've ever seen. I had 300 cats in a lady's house. 300 cats. And
wow.
she was a sweetheart, man. That equaled love. Like, she loved these animals so much. She didn't maybe necessarily keep up with them the way she should, but the love was intentional and real. And people always get nervous because they'll be like, I got 3 cats or 4 cats. And so instead of saying, how many cats do you have, where it makes someone feel guilty, I say, hey, do you have 300 cats? And they'll be like, no, I have 17, right? And they're like 300 cats. And so like, I've even learned to communicate at the worst level high. So that way, when you come in high, no one gets anywhere near that and they feel a lot more relaxed.
That's a great strategy to employ, because it's hard to feel bad when you know that Matt has seen somebody with 300. Like, there's no.
So I go right at it. It's the ultimate icebreaker, because it gets rid of their fear of judgment and their embarrassment, and they go right to like, oh well, God, I don't have 300 cats. I only got like 11. This is great. Let me tell you about Sparky, and they start talking about their cats.
I love it. Well, Matt, you played just a pivotal role in the TV show Hoarders. I have been a fan. I think we have officially seen every single episode. It's so funny. My wife and I, a bunch of the seasons right now are on Hulu, and so we've been going back watching like an episode a night every night. That's like our show before bed show. And just so, how did you get involved with even finding out? Like, did they come and find
how did I get on?
Was it something you applied for?
So nobody wanted to do it, to be honest. I've had a career of doing the work no one else wants to do. And no one thought this show was going to do anything. They had ordered 6 episodes. And in fact, I watched the first episode from home.
Oh, really?
And I was like, I do that. And Dr. Tompkins or Dr. Tolan was on it. And I was like, I do exactly what that guy does. I didn't know that guy was like the top researcher in the country at the time, and now a very good friend. But this was actually 11 years ago, believe it or not. I had been cleaning houses for 5 years, and I'll tell the story. I got into some trouble and lost my career, and it was a really sad place in my own doing. And I started cleaning old ladies' attics because it was really the only work I could get.
Right.
And then I realized their grief was very similar to the grief I was going through. And so my communication techniques got a little better, and I was working in a grief camp for children and things. So I was learning how to like communicate during grief.
Right.
And so I was cleaning these ladies' houses for 5 years before I went on TV.
Wow.
And I saw it on TV. I reached out to a buddy on Facebook. Had kind of really just started. And I was like, I wonder if I could get on this TV show. And I started just pinging all these people. Does anyone know anybody? I think I had like 200 friends on Facebook at the time. And then a friend of a friend of a friend said, call this guy, then call this guy, then this guy. And I ended up getting in touch with a guy named Peter Walsh, who was Oprah Winfrey's organizer. And he was like, oh, man, I don't have any work for you, but I got this show that I don't want to do it, and no one else wants to do it. You should talk to him. And so I talked to him, and on a Monday, they were like, we don't want anybody on TV. We're good. We just need houses to clean. I was like, well, great. I've got a company. And so by Friday, they were like, can you be on TV? And so on a Monday, I didn't know anything about it. I had watched the show on TV that Monday night. And by Friday, I was filming a new episode in Alabama. And I didn't know anything about being on TV or anything.
Well, the reason I reached out to you when we were watching the show is you and Dr. Zazio are mine and my wife's 2 favorite people on the show. I mean, everybody on that show, we love seeing that. But for whatever reason, I love the way you interact with people, because you do it from you can tell it comes from your heart, but you aren't afraid to just be real and be honest and to let them know exactly what it's going through. And so, when you started this process, what seems like it's just going to be help people get their stuff cleaned up, there's a lot of emotion involved.
It's all emotion.
And so how do you kind of control your own emotions when you're trying to help somebody see that what they're doing is hurting so many people and themselves?
Okay, so here's the secret about TV. We film 100 hours for 1 hour of TV. And there's a reason Robin, Dr. Zazio and I are paired together. Dr. Zazio can handle the most, she's the therapist. And let me assure you, the therapist trumps everyone else on set, right? Dr. Zazio and I are there to help people. The TV crew is there to make a TV show. And we're filming a mental health disorder, which is there's an ethical dilemma right from the start. We're putting a mental health disorder on television for entertainment. And so you have to have a champion for the hoarder, and that's Dr. Zazio and myself. But when I'm there, I actually do get really emotional because I care so much about the person. I'll go a day ahead of time, and I'll spend a whole day with the family with no cameras there because I want to really get to know the hoarder. So like you see me like getting frustrated with the hoarder or talking very specifically to the son. A lot of times that's because I've spent so much time with the family on the phone and in person that we're friends now. I mean, like I'm not this TV guy. Like I really care about this lady and I'm frustrated with it just like the kids are. Now, what they don't show you is a lot of times I get really upset and I will have emotion. And Dr. Zazio has to kind of talk me down. And so there's probably one or two, and they showed it one time. We encouraged them to show it on that one episode with the mansion. And I lost it. I mean, the lady broke me.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is important for families to know that, like, you can't always keep your composure, just because you love the person. And Robin had to really, she really let me have it, to be honest. She was like, this is unprofessional and you can't behave this way. And she really let me know that in a very strong way. And let me tell you, you do not want Dr. Zazio on your bad side. That woman can let you have it.
I bet.
But her job is to keep the hoarder always on point, and she does.
Yeah. Well, and I've worked with several people who've been in the media industry, and they say exactly what you just shared about how, hundreds of hours of filming for less than an hour show. And so I can imagine there's so many things that you, even being there, was like, oh, I wish this would have made in there. Like, people would have understood more about this.
The emotional moments, the one that you walk away and you're like, I changed that person's life. Like this, I'm sure, like in teaching, the same thing. Like, you have a moment and you're like, if I was a football coach, I'd be getting carried off the field right now. And there's no one there to see it, and you're by yourself. And TV's the same way. Like, I always will write myself a note, like, this was a great scene. I loved helping this lady. None of that ever makes the show, ever.
Well, there was a season or two, though, where you were going in and going the night before and staying the night in people's homes. And I got to tell you, there's parts of the show that kind of just give me the heebie-jeebies sometimes when I'm watching, like, oh, I can't even imagine. But when I see you in there with like your own little camera and you're like, I'm going to try to sleep, but I can hear rats, or I'm like, how did you, like, you just told me earlier, you're organized, you're neat. And it's one thing to go in and help somebody clean up, but it's another to go in and stay the night before to truly get to know them and their environment. How did you get over just the fear of doing that?
There's a lot of therapy. I was in a lot of therapy at the time. So what we're not talking about is, why did I get into this? I actually had a lot of grief. I had my dad, my stepdad, and both my grandfathers died when I was 24 in 1 year. So lost all the men that raised me. They all died in about 18 months. And I had to clean up their houses. Mm-hmm. And I was overcoming actually a pretty bad, I had a really bad gambling addiction as well. And I'm very open about that. I mean, I lost my whole life. I lived in Lake Tahoe at Caesar's Palace and had a big gambling addiction. And so I was overcoming addiction, and I was dealing with grief. And the only job I get was clean these houses. Now, so that being said, I was going through a lot of grief. I was in therapy myself. So I was viewing myself as equal with these hoarders. Like, my life was on a saw as well. I was teetering. Theirs is just with stuff. Mine was with other issues. And so I viewed it like as peers. And that's one thing I've always gone into with hoarding. It's like, dude, this is someone's grandma. This is someone's mom. They're going through the same stuff I am. I just happen to have a really good mom that raised me and gave me the ability and the tool set to get through my grief. Yeah. And these people didn't have that. So that being said, the network came to me and they said, we want you to spend the night. And I was like, ugh, that seems kind of unethical. I don't know. It seems like you're just trying to get some ratings. And they're like, totally, right. This is totally for ratings. And so I went to Dr. Tompkins. I went to all the top therapists, and they all were like, don't do it. And I went to my mother, who's really important to me. She said, don't do it. My wife said the same thing. Everyone was like, don't do it. And so I went back to the network and I was like, guys, I'm sorry. There's no amount of money. I'm not going to do this. Yeah. And then it turns out about 5 minutes later, there is actually a specific amount of money you can pay me to make me spend the night. And so I did it for the wrong reasons. I did it for money, right? Yeah. And there's a point to the story. I went into it not knowing how much I was going to learn, because I thought I knew everything about hoarding. And this was 7 years ago, believe it or not. And it's still the most important thing I've ever done in my career. I got into that hoard still thinking I knew everything about hoarding, because I had cleaned thousands of houses in the daytime. What I didn't know was when you lose your sight, that's when the mental games really start. And so I never truly understood hoarding disorder, the mental side. And because it's a physical disorder, but it manifests mentally. Right. And so when you're laying in that house and it's dark, you're like, I know that's a garden hose. I can feel the garden hose on my leg. But man, what if it's a snake? Yeah. Or you start to sweat. It gets really hot and you're like, I know that's sweat. I know that's sweat. But man, it feels like a spider. Right. And your brain starts to play tricks on you. And your brain can go anywhere, man. And you just don't even know where your brain will go until you're put into that situation. And so what I learned after the first episode was I've got to go as far as I can go mentally and suffer in fear that these hoarders go through, or I'll never understand them. Yeah. And so I ended up doing it 7 times. And every time I quit, I gave up because I had a hotel or I had a car. I had somewhere else I could go. Yeah. And what I learned was the hoarders had no other options. And so that's why they would sleep like in a bathtub or in a ditch or something. And so I really had to let myself go to the farthest depths that I've ever gone emotionally. And it scared me a lot. And I actually had to go to some therapy on the back end of it.
I can imagine.
But I got to tell you, I've never understood hoarders better. And I will argue it's the best research I've ever done.
I can imagine that being completely true. Well, before we move on from this, I'd like to ask, and I see someone put in the comments as well, the big question of mine has always been the people, every single person, whether they're family or any member of the show, goes into a house, the first thing they comment on is the smell. And I know that y'all wear masks and many of them. That doesn't stop the smell. So how do you get over the natural inclination to gag or to walk out when you've got to be in there for hours?
Yeah, so it's a choice. I think you can choose to. My job is to basically. I knew this from playing poker professionally, believe it or not. I got to act like I've been there before. And if I walk, I've got to have a poker face. If I walk into the house and I'm like, "Oh my God, do you smell those 500 cats?" That's going to destroy the hoarder. Mm-hmm. So I'm making a choice to have a flat face no matter what. Now, here's the real secret. I put tea tree oil all across my nose. And at Christmas time, I put peppermint oil. I put essential oils. And I'm not one of these people that believes essential oils will fix a broken bone or anything.
Right.
But, man, they can make you not smell dead bodies and dead cats.
That is the best advice. That's brilliant.
I love the peppermint. That's where I'm at right now. I really enjoy the peppermint oil because the tea tree oil still smells it's too wrapped up in my past. So I have a mental – when I smell tea tree oil, I feel like I'm in a hoarded house now because I've been in so many. And so I've had to switch it up. And so I switched my oils to make the smell. So right now, peppermint oil makes me feel like I'm at Christmas time. It brings me happiness and brings me joy. There's a lot of mental playmanship going on when you're in a hoarded house for, 10 hours, you got to take a break. You got to, and I use humor a lot. You hear me doing a lot of dad jokes and weird, silly things. And that's on purpose. Because if you can't laugh in a hoard, man, you're not going to get out of it. I mean, these people there's some kind of really bad. I mean, hoarders are good people. They're usually really intelligent, but traumatized. Something bad has happened. They've lost a family member. They've lost a loved one. They've lost a career, divorce. Something bad has traumatized them, some type of abuse. And this is how they end up looking for happiness and stuff. And so my job is to make them laugh and to bring them some joy. And so I do the dumbest jokes. I mean, and I love it, and it makes me laugh, and then it makes them laugh. And that's probably the biggest tool, even more than safety tools, is humor. You just got to when you think it's the absolute worst time to tell a joke and you're like, I don't know if I should tell this one. That's usually the one you should tell because that's going to get people. Teaching, I wouldn't advise that. In teaching, no. But in hoarding, yes, that's the time to do it.
Well, Matt, there's been some episodes that my wife and I have watched that we saw years ago that the story still has stuck with us, just with whether we were emotionally tied to what they'd been through or it was just so powerfully exuded. And so when you look back on your experiences, do you have those handful of families where you're like, their story's never going to leave my mind? Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of hoarders that I really love. I mean, they became good friends. There was one, I can't remember, and Shannon was her name. It was out in California, but her kids were the exact same age as my kids at that point. And so I found all the toys that my kids played with at home. I would find them at her house, exact same toys usually from Target. And it just hit me. I was just thinking these kids had never seen when we cleaned the house, her 6-year-old ran in and he goes, we have a couch. We have a couch. He had never seen a couch before. And I lost it, man. I just started bawling on TV because I was thinking about my sons. And that was really emotional for me. Sandra, the first 2-hour episode we ever did in Greensboro, were the two gentlemen that bought a mansion to restore it. Yes. They basically inherited a hoarder. She was squatting on the property. And Sandra she broke me. I actually quit the show after that episode for a year because I felt like she pushed me so hard that I started to question my abilities as a cleaner. And as I was like, I got to the point, she got so far deep into my head that I started to believe that I was horrible at my job and actually that I couldn't help anybody and that I should quit. And I did. I quit. I got out of hoarding for a year because she broke me. And And then I remembered through all my research and everything I've done, and I worked a lot with a lot of the therapists, like when a hoarder screams and yells at you and treats you really badly, they're doing it to hurt you and to make you leave. And because if I'm not there, I can't hurt her. And it's that last part you forget, right? I'm sure it's the same thing in education. When a kid yells at you and screams at you, it's because he wants you to leave him alone, because if you leave him alone, you can't hurt him, right? And same thing with the hoarder. She was just trying to protect herself. It had nothing to do with me, but it took me a bit of counseling to remember that. But I love saying, and the two gentlemen that bought that house, the couple, I've stayed very good friends with them and their daughters, and I just love them. And
I love that.
I'm lucky, man. I've got a great career. I mean, but there's a lot of, you definitely have to be confident in yourself to take that type of abuse on a daily basis. And,
Matt,
I did.
Something that I'm interested in is, you're very open about your past and what's happened that has led you to the experiences you've gotten today. And, that's difficult for so many people. And I found that even on Tell Your Story, so many guests that I've invited on, it's scary to share pieces of your personal self with others, even though that it always ends up helping because people feel that they're not alone. When you knew you had been through those trials, you knew you had been through that pain, and then you decide to put yourself in front of a national audience, was there that element of, are they going to think that I shouldn't be here? Should people find out about my past and completely judge me? Like, how did you get over that?
So there were years, there were probably the first 3 years, I was like, I'm not a therapist. I'm not trained in this. Well, there was no training. I now do all the training for hoarding, right? All the certification. But there's always that fear of like, wait a minute, am I brilliant or am I actually a huge fraud and everybody's going to find out, right? There's a balance of that. And I just went back to, faith is a large part of my life. I don't talk about it often. I think the more you talk about faith on television, people turn it off.
Right.
And I don't care what your faith is, whatever you believe in, I hope you believe in something. Yeah. But for me, I just hope you have something that makes you feel good. But for me, and I don't believe it's my place to put any faith on anybody, right? For me, my life got so bad at one point in my 20s with my gambling addiction that I remember thinking like, all right, dude, like there's got to be a bigger reason here, or you wouldn't put me through all this. And I'm not saying that God has a wand and makes everything happen, but I just finally accepted like, okay, if I'm going to be at this low of a point and I'm going to be at this, personally, and I'm going to make this many mistakes, I better make good with it.
Right.
And I did that when I was down and out. I realized that. And so instead of like saying, okay, man, you're giving me more than I can handle, this is really hard.
Yeah.
I realized that, okay, this is another opportunity to teach somebody. And so I turned it into everyone else looked at my life. My poor mother was just like, you are stacking up failures, right? Like you're never going to get through this. And to me, my mindset was, man, I'm stacking up opportunity to help people and change people. And I got to tell you, 11 years later, it's helped thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people. And when you start to communicate like I call it with brutal honesty, like total openness, total brutal honesty, it's really hard to go backwards.
Right.
Like on Facebook, it's a lot of people are spending a lot of time on Facebook. I think 75% of Facebook is fake, right? It's all BS. And so I spend my time doing the opposite, which is brutally honest. And people really like it because it's opposite from the rest of the world. And I got to tell you, man, when you start to communicate openly and honestly, all that fear goes away.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing, you're not hiding anything. You're not trying to be something you're not. You just are who you are. Right. And I got to tell you, at the end of the day, you got to be who you are, whatever that is. And if someone doesn't like you, then they're not the person for you. They shouldn't be in your life. And it took me 10 years to get that comfortable with it, but I'm fine. If you don't like me, you don't like me. Okay. Yeah. And if you love me, you love me. And that's fine too. And I think my kid becoming a dad and really having a good relationship with my sons, that brings a lot of balance to my life too.
Right. Yeah. Well, Matt, I've got 2 questions left for you. The first one is, you've got a new endeavor you mentioned on PBS. Tell me about that.
So Legacy List with Matt Paxton. It's on PBS. It's a fun, positive, a lot easier show. And we're cleaning out your grandparents' houses when they move to senior living or they're downsizing. And sometimes it's an estate clean out after your grandparents have passed away. Right. And we're finding history and stories in people's houses. Because what I've learned from hoarding or senior downsizing, it's all about the stories, right? The reason we hold on to the items is because we have emotion attached to them. the best way to really celebrate those emotions and to let go of them is to tell the stories. And so it's a show about telling your stories with your family. And we found some really awesome stuff, man.
I love it. That to me is just another interesting. My wife and I are going to be checking that one out because I can't wait to kind of see.
It's on. You can go. It's on demand on PBS now. We just finished season 1. We're casting season 2 right now, but you can watch it on PBS anywhere in the country or PBS.org. But
Legacy List.
If you just type in my name, Matt Paxton, PBS, it'll come up. But if you go to if you got a family member that has some cool stuff and you want to be on my show, go to mylegacylist.com, and we're actually casting right now anywhere in the country.
Awesome. I love it. Well, Matt, one question that I always love to end all of these conversations on is I believe as people, there are so many things that we hold close to our heart and who we are and what we believe. And so for anybody listening or watching today, if they were to walk away with one thing, what would your one thing for them be?
Oh my gosh. I'm a big believer in everything happens for a reason, still to this day. And I'm not saying that God mandates it, but sometimes it's not on the same time frame that we want to be on. I mean, I look back 20 years ago when I was in the casino losing everything and my life was falling apart. Like, it was really hard to believe that this would make sense someday. And here we are 20 years later, like, it all makes sense. I'm helping millions of people because of my 10 years of failure.
Yeah.
But during that 10 years, it was really, really hard to see it.
Yeah.
Some reason there was a belief in my brain that it would pay off. Man, I got a great life because I failed so much in my 20s and 30s. And if I had just gotten a regular job and like worked and not taken all these chances and all these failures, I don't know what I would have really had to give to the world. Because now my failures are what I've got to give, and they seem to help. Specifically to the educators that are listening, thank you for what you do. I think you're in a place right now where I'm a dad and I'm at home helping my kids with school. Man, I respect more than ever what you do. I did not understand it. I'll never make a joke about you having the summer off again. Like, I promise you, man, like, your day is coming. I think you guys are finally going to get raises next year because we appreciate what you do. And my kids miss their teachers more than they miss me. And I didn't respect the relationship that our educators and our kids have. And I hope the world's seeing that too.
I love that. Well, Matt, I have been a huge fan of yours for years, and for you to spend some time to come on and chat with me today, I can't even tell you how much it means. But after getting to hear even more of your story and more of your heart, I respect you even more. So thank you for spending a few minutes with me today.
Thank you, guys. And there's new Hoarders episodes coming out. We filmed them last year. I don't know when they are, but there's a bunch coming, and they just put it on. So Facebook is now on Hulu and on Netflix. And so
yes, I saw they released the season on Netflix too. Yeah.
I think we're going to have a whole new world of people that have never seen it before.
Oh yeah,
which is great.
Well, and thank you everybody for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you get your stuff. It's there. I hope today's conversation with Matt has encouraged you to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters.